This video is for Chapter 18, linked lists, and this is a very simple program that creates a simple linked list and then traverses it to display the data. And I've gone ahead and put in some of the code up here at the top, including the structure definition. The structure is called vote. It has a char candidate field that is for the candidate's name, and then an integer votes field for the number of votes the candidate receives, and most importantly, a pointer field that will allow us to hook these nodes together and then to traverse the list. Then I have two functions. Add nodes is the first one, where I'm going to actually build my linked list, and it's being passed three parameters. The first two, start pointer and current, are pointer fields, and they're being passed by reference. That's why there's an asterisk to indicate pointer, and then the ampersand to indicate that it is being passed by reference. And then the last one is the integer value j, which is the number of candidates that I'm going to create, that I'm going to enter, and how many nodes that'll be in my list. The display list function is simply being passed the pointer by reference of where the list starts. So the start pointer will be used to actually mark the beginning of my linked list. I'll use current to manipulate through the list, to traverse the list. And then the pointer field, vote pointer, in the very last node will be pointing to null, so that will indicate where the end of the list is. I have a couple of declarations that I need to make here in main. The first one being the pointer, start pointer, which is going to be set, initialized to null. So start ptr is going to be set equal to the value null, which means nothing, or the end of the list in the case of a linked list. Then I'm going to declare also as a pointer to a type of structure called vote, current, the one I'm going to use to manipulate through my list. And then I need to also declare j, because that's going to be the number of candidates in my list. So now I need to prompt the user to actually enter the number of candidates. And it can be any number. That's the beauty of a linked list. It is dynamic, and however many I tell it is how many nodes it's going to create. So I'm going to read in j. That's going to store my number of elements in my linked list. And then I need to call my functions, because they do the work in this program. So add nodes is the first one, and I'm passing the start pointer as well as the current pointer as well as j. Then I'm going to call the display list function with the start pointer, so I know where to start traversing through my list. And that's it for the main program, so it's very short. The body of the code, of course, is going to go in my function. So I'm going to copy this header, this prototype, everything but the semicolon, and that becomes my function header for add nodes when I paste it here. And then I'm going to open and close my function, because I'm just going to stub these out for now and then do a build to see if I'm good up to this point. So again, I'm just copying the prototype statement up to, but not including, the semicolon, and then coming down here and pasting it, and again open and close my functions. So now I'll build what I have to make sure that everything up to this point is correct, and it should be. It is. I got a successful build down there, so now I'm ready to come in and actually put in the body of the functions. And add nodes is the most important one, because it's where I'm creating my list. So I've got a couple of local definitions here. I'm going to use temp and another pointer, temp2, to traverse through my list with. And then I'm going to start my loop, and I'm going to declare I locally. And I know what my end condition is. That is that I has to be less than j, the number of candidates, and then just increment I for my for loop. And then I'm going to clear the screen between each entry so that it's easier to read the screen. So I'm making a call to the system, the CLS method. Now, temp equals new vote. So I've just created the first node, which will be the first one in the list. On subsequent passes of the for loop, it'll hit that and it'll create another new node, and then what we have to do is attach it to the end of the current list. So the first thing I want to do here is to actually input the candidate's name. So I'm going to prompt the user to enter the name. And then read it in using the proper notation, which is the arrow, and candidate is the field in my structure that I'm going to store that in. So my temporary pointer, the candidate field. Then I need to prompt again to enter the number of votes. And of course read it in, again using the proper notation for a linked list, which is temp, which field? The votes field. Then I've got one more field to deal with in my structure, and that's the pointer field. And what I want to do is to set it equal to null. So each new node, as I add it, the pointer in that field will point to null. So when I get to the last node that I'm putting in, the vote PTR pointer field will point to null. So what I have to do is to check further down here in the code, and that's what I'm about to do, to see where I am in my list, because it may not stay pointing to null depending on where I am. So my first check here is to see if the list is empty. So is the start pointer equal to null? If it is, this is the first node in the list. And on the first pass of the loop, that would be true. So I want to set the start pointer equal to temp. I also want to set current equal to the start pointer. Okay, so the start pointer is the first node in the list, and it's pointing to null. Now current is equal to the start pointer, so on this pass it's pointing to null as well. But if I'm not at the beginning of the list, because I'm only going to be at the beginning, start pointer is only going to be null on the first pass. After that it's going to come down and do the code here in the else block. So what I want to do here is use my temporary pointers that I created. I'm going to use temp2 and be sure I've saved the beginning of the list by storing the start pointer at that location. Then while temp2's pointer field is not equal to null, so I'm not at the end of the list, which after the first pass I won't be. If that is true, then I want to manipulate these pointers by making temp2 equal to temp2's vote pointer. And remember, that vote pointer will be pointed, the last one in the list will always be pointing to null. So it's going to step through that while loop as long as it's not null. When it finds the null pointer, it knows it's at the end of the list. Then we want to say that temp2's vote pointer is equal to temp, or the new node I just created. So I'm putting that new node at the end of the list. So what this while loop does right here is steps me through all of the nodes that are currently in the list until it finds the one that's pointing to null. When it does, it takes the new node I've just created and makes the previous node point to it. I'll close my else block, close my for statement, and I've already closed my function. So I can build again to see if I'm good in through this function, because I still have the last one stubbed and I've got an error. So while temp 2, I got an extra symbol in there. Temp 2, yeah, I'm not telling it which I'm pointing to. It's the vote PTR is not equal to null. That makes a little bit more sense. Let's try that again. Okay, good this time. Mistyped that. Okay, so now we're ready to traverse the list down here with display list. This is a little bit easier to do, but I still need a temporary, and I'm going to call it temp, pointer to traverse through with. So I'm going to set temp equal to the start pointer. That puts me at the beginning of my list. Then I'm going to clear the screen again for my output. So another call to system CLS and a header line of sorts, not much. We're just going to put candidate, and I used some test data that established I should do a couple of tabs in there. Votes and a line feed. That's it. And then I'm going to start my while loop, which is a pretty simple condition. While temp is not equal to null. In other words, as long as I'm moving through the list, because temp up here is attached now to the start pointer. So that means that temp is at the beginning of the list. When temp gets to the end of the list, then the vote pointer in the last node will be pointing to null. So as long as this is true, then my while loop needs to execute. So I've got two statements in my while loop. One is the cout that's going to actually print the data, which is temp, the candidate, and then I want to do a couple of tabs here to match my header, and then temp, the votes field. And then I just need a line feed here on the end. And then I need to move my pointer. So temp is equal to temp vote PTR. So now I've set temp equal to the pointer field in the list that's pointing to the next item in the list or null, depending on where I am in the list. And that's all there is to traversing the list. It's just manipulating this temp pointer so that it's now pointing to the next node, the next node, the next node until it points to null. Because remember up here, we've set it to the beginning of the list with start pointer. So let's build it again and make sure that we are good in this function. And we're not. I've missed something, so let's check the error here. In the file found. So I'm off somewhere, and I was good down through my add, so somewhere in here I'm off. Did not close my while loop. Right there. So now we should get a clean build. We did. So now I can execute it. Now, I'm going to enter the number of candidates, and I don't want to type a whole lot, so I'm just going to put 3 in. But remember, this is dynamic, so whatever I enter here, that is going to be the size of my list, whether it's 3 or 3,000. And then it says enter the candidate's name, so, and the votes received. The next candidate, Jones, gets 35. And the last candidate only had 3, Smith, with 67. Then it goes to my display list where it started, assigned the start pointer equal to temp, which puts it right here at the beginning of the list. And then as I print this out, I manipulated the pointer. I made the pointer field in each one of these structures or nodes point to the next item in the list and the next item in the list until it points to null, and then it's finished and it knows it's finished. So there's a simple linked list that we added nodes to and then traversed.